Someone once told you, plainly, that you weren't creative enough, or ready, or good enough, and it's still sitting in your head today, quietly shaping what you dare to try. You've got yourself editing an idea down before you even say it out loud, making it smaller and safer, so it can't get rejected twice. In 1919, a newspaper editor fired a 22-year-old cartoonist named Walt Disney on record for lacking imagination and having no good ideas. That verdict is where the story starts, not where it ends. He didn't storm off to prove the editor wrong in some dramatic way. He just kept drawing, kept experimenting with a new technique called cell animation. Almost nobody around him understood yet. He started a studio, La Fogram, selling short animated fairy tales to local theaters, funded almost entirely on credit and promises he couldn't yet back up. His biggest distributor paid late, then paid less, then stopped paying entirely. Rent, film stock, and his small staff's wages didn't pause to wait for the money to show up. When he couldn't afford an apartment anymore, he moved into the office. He ate out of cans, kept working through it, and didn't tell his family how bad things had gotten. Laugh Obram collapsed completely in 1923. He was broke, in debt, and left Kansas City with a train ticket, one suitcase, and almost nothing else to his name. He landed in Hollywood and started over in his uncle's garage. This time with his brother Roy handling money he'd already proven he didn't know how to manage himself. This pattern. Get told no, lose everything, rebuild smaller and smarter. Didn't happen to him once, it happened in different forms at nearly every stage of his career. He created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, his first real success, then found out he didn't own the character at all because he'd signed a contract without understanding what he was giving away. The problem was never that his ideas weren't good. Oswald proved that. The problem was that he kept handing control of his own work to people who didn't have his interests at heart. Here's the deeper root. Raw, creative ability can get you into the room, but it can't protect what happens once you're in it. Without contracts and ownership, your best work stays vulnerable to whoever holds the paperwork. He didn't read a book on business fundamentals and apply it. He lost a character with his own name attached to it, and that loss is what finally taught him to build differently. Losing the newspaper job taught him nobody was going to hand him permission. Losing Oswald taught him permission wasn't enough. He also needed ownership. Both lessons had to land before real progress could stick. Right after losing Oswald, with no time to grieve it, he had to invent a replacement character from nothing, under pressure, with no safety net of a proven hit left standing. Mickey Mouse was born out of that specific desperation, sketched on a train ride home from the meeting where he found out Oswald was gone for good. The first Mickey Mouse shorts didn't get picked up right away. Distributors had just watched him lose one character and weren't rushing to bet on his next one. Animation was still mostly silent, and adding synchronized sound was expensive, unproven, and technically difficult. He gambled on it anyway, with money he barely had to spare. Years later, making the first full length animated feature, he mortgaged his house and pulled financing from every source he could find, because the studio's cash alone couldn't cover it. People in Hollywood openly mocked the project before it existed. Certain audiences would never sit through an hour of cartoon storytelling. He kept building it anyway, over years, not months. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs cost roughly 4 times the original estimate, and for a long stretch, nobody outside the studio believed it would ever earn that back. Roy, who handled the money and usually trusted him, pushed back hard on the spending. Doubt from someone close to you cuts differently than a stranger's rejection ever does. There was no proof of concept for feature length animation. He wasn't executing a plan he felt confident in. He was making a bet he genuinely couldn't be sure would pay off. The comeback story people repeat leaves out how many years he spent not knowing if any of it would work, doing the unglamorous work anyway. Because stopping felt worse than failing. It wasn't newspaper job, then bankruptcy, then straight to success. It was failure, small win, bigger loss, longer rebuild, repeated, with real financial danger at almost every step. At no point did the story hand him certainty. He just kept choosing to build the next thing before he knew whether the last thing had actually worked. He didn't lack imagination. He had more of it than the people judging him knew what to do with. The failure was about fit and structure, not creative worth. An editor's opinion in 1919 described that editor's limits, not Walt Disney's ceiling. The same is true for whatever verdict is sitting in your head right now. Losing everything at Laugh or Graham is what made him take contracts seriously later. The collapse wasn't wasted. It became the exact education that let him keep Mickey Mouse when Oswald had slipped away. After that loss, he made sure he owned his characters, his merchandising, and eventually his own distribution. The pain of one bad contract reshaped every deal he signed after. Instead of asking, am I good enough? He asked, what structure let this happen? And fix that structure. That question is repeatable. The other one just keeps you stuck. He didn't just try harder at the same thing. He changed what he owned, who he partnered with, and how he financed risk each time he got knocked down. Before the feature film gamble, there were years of shorts, technical experiments, and smaller wins that built both his skill and his credibility enough to survive one enormous bet. He didn't feel certain and then act. He acted, gathered real evidence from small wins, and let that evidence build the confidence to take the next larger risk. Every major piece of what became Disney, the studio, the mouse, the feature films, sits directly on top of a failure that came right before it, not a straight line of wins. Think about the last time someone judged your idea, your work, or your worth, and you quietly accepted it as fact instead of as one person's limited opinion. Look at what you're building right now, a project, a side business, a skill, and ask who actually controls it if things go sideways. That's your Oswald question. Notice the idea you made smaller, safer, and less interesting than it originally was. Purely so. It would be easier to defend if it failed. You don't need certainty that your next move will work. You need one small, testable version of it, the way he needed one short film before he needed a feature. If something you built recently collapsed, consider that it might be teaching you exactly the structural lesson you need before your next attempt, the way bankruptcy taught him about ownership. Next time something falls apart, resist the urge to make it a verdict on your worth. Ask what contract, habit, or system let it fall apart and fix that instead. At some point, backing your own idea will feel financially uncomfortable and unproven to everyone around you. That discomfort isn't a sign to stop, it usually means you're finally betting on something real. So ask yourself honestly, whose old opinion of you are you still treating as permanent fact? And what would you actually build if you stopped? Right now, name the one rejection you're still carrying and pick one small thing you can build this week that quietly proves it wrong. If this kind of real, unglamorous rebuilding story is useful to you, follow along. Next time, we'll walk through someone else who got told no and built anyway.